share. And this is where we were. Okay. So some of the competencies, surprise, are based in emotional intelligence, conflict management, decision-making skills, ability to influence others, self-care and wellness, and self-leadership. These 6 leadership competencies have been shown to be extremely important in leading yourself and leading others. Now, even though the concept or the picture I painted was about healthcare executives and healthcare leadership and why it's important to have the right leader in the right place because of burnout, it is no different than when you are leading yourself. It's the same exact thing. So moving forward, what are some of the challenges for organizations and physicians? If you want to take a leadership role or somebody asks you or the organizations, one, they have to navigate the identity of the physician. We are who we are. You've heard that before, but we can change because of neuroplasticity, because of emotional intelligence. You go back to the realms of EI and what they are responsible for, you will see how, that's why if you remember, we know from EI research, it is at the core of leadership. But if you think about all the attributes you mentioned, listening, communicating, able to take criticism, confidence, optimism, and so on and so forth, these are EQ. And now you know why those attributes are at the core of leadership. We have to maximize their training. It'll be a very good idea that if you instill those leadership qualities in the patient and the physicians from med school onwards, make it part of the curriculum, much easier than later on when we are set in our ways. We have to influence the thought process of physicians. If you were to go to your attendings, not just your attending, anybody who's experienced and they are set in their ways, right? And you want to influence their thought process. Your patients, they're set in their ways, and unless something life-threatening happens, how difficult is it to change somebody's mind? Can be very difficult. And in something as intimate as leadership, it can be extremely difficult. It's like pulling tusks. So we have to be able to influence physicians. We have to be able to develop their leadership skills and understand the new landscape of the profession and business of medicine. Like I said, how we practice now is so different than before. We have to be able to prevent burnout. And we have to be able to find ways to enhance self-care and wellness. These are our challenges moving forward. Great, wonderful. Where do I begin? I want to become an active member of all of this. Where do I begin? Where do you think you begin? I've been hammering this all day or all the time, but where do you think you have to begin?
Yourself.
Thank you, McKenna. If I had points, I'd give you +5, but I don't. Before you are a leader, success is all about growing yourself. You want to show the way, know the way. When you become a leader, success is all about growing others. Can't grow others if you're not growing yourself. So self-leadership, kind of let's focus the camera lens on us. It is the practice of intentionally influencing your thinking, feeling, and behavior to achieve your objectives. Intentionally, so something you have to do, an active role, nothing passive, right? Self-care, an active role. Burnout, an active role. Exceptional leaders distinguish themselves because of superior self-leadership. And where does it all start? Heather said it, self-awareness. And I'll highlight that even more. At the individual level, studies consistently show that increased self-leadership corresponds with better effective responses and improved work performance. Simple. A note about neuroleadership, I tell you, it's all about your prefrontal cortex and the brain. Leadership of others starts with you and ends with them, okay? 3 great aspects of great leaders. They're able to create a safe environment. The brain works that much more and better when it understands that the environment is safe to operate in. Indeed, all of us work that much more when we know that the environment is safe. Being in an unsafe environment, burnout. Being in an unsafe environment, we can't think about, you don't need me to say it, you are working in the COVID environment. I'm sure you've noticed changes on how you perform. When you demonstrate fairness, the perception of unfairness creates hostility in the brain, resentment, and negative emotions. That's why that leadership scale that I talked about was so important. Be genuine and show trust in others. Neuromirroring refers to a well-studied form of behavior where we mirror the actions and attitudes and behavior of those in front of us. If the person in front of us is untrustworthy, we become the same way. Take that, I'm going to use Cody again. He's going into the OR and he's doing the surgery, and then God forbid there's a complication. If he panics, everybody panics. If he says, all right, I got this, everybody's got this. In animal studies, in a herd, there's an alpha male and an alpha female. They found out that there was a herd of horses or zebras, I forgot, or whichever the animal was. They were grazing. The herd looked up at the alpha male and alpha female 17 times every minute to see how they are. If the alpha male and alpha female are calm, they went back to grazing. If they were on edge, everybody's on edge. But 17 times a minute, they were looking to see at their leaders, then they went back, then they looked, and they were like, it's exhausting. That's how much we need from our leaders. So several programs I know of have attempted to tackle the issue of physician leadership and training. 4 recurring pillars and abilities that we have to focus on: leading the change, developing self and others, fostering framework, and demonstrating character and integrity. If we work within these 4 frames, we are able to create the best version of leaders in healthcare and within yourself. So development to lead change, developing ourselves to be able to develop ourselves and others, training ourselves to foster teamwork, and demonstrating character and integrity, fairness, everything you talked about. So there's a need to develop physician leaders. The challenges I talked about are some of them now on a global level, higher level. Healthcare organizations are made up of many professional workforces and silos, making them complex structures to manage. So the first part was talking about the physicians and the obstacles with them, and then on an organizational level, they have to deal with the physician characteristics. There's not enough time or opportunities during academic training, so this is on a much broader level. We have to create those. The presence of several urgent challenges with respect to quality, access, and affordability makes training physicians become less of a priority. So the challenge is to develop leadership from within the organization, the challenges from the external environment, new technologies with their own challenges in evolving structure, and the difficulty of managing the professional workforce while operating in multiple and potentially competing goals of service. It is a tremendous challenge to do so, but it is very well achievable. As we know, some of the physicians are great leaders because they met those challenges. So here's healthcare, like I said, as we know it now, right? From Alphonse Leveran. Science, especially natural and medical science, is always undergoing evolution, and one can never hope to have said the last word upon any branch of it. And to quote better Hippocrates, we need to declare the past, diagnose the present, foretell the future of any disease, of any situation. To be able to know where we're going, you'll be able to see it, you have to be able to diagnose the present and declare the past. The great purpose of this study, medicine, is to make the physician. And the physician is he who, within the limits and conditions of his science and art, prevents, mitigates, and cures disease. The issue, though, is most physicians now will tell you, look, I'm a doctor, I don't need to learn anything. You're in this program, you're learning management, you're learning how to write contracts, you're learning how to negotiate stuff. Why? Because that is the demand of your healthcare environment, or else you wouldn't be here. You'll just be focusing on being a physician. So we do have to evolve. And with that evolution comes less burnout. Again, a recurring theme. You may not control life circumstances, but getting to be the author of your life means getting to control what you do with them. That shift in mindset, life is what happens to me, to life is what I make happen. I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. And leadership is not a position or a title, it is an action and example. All right. I need you to all, I asked you to raise your right hand and take the new oath of physicians. Now I need you to take your right hand and swear or promise or take an oath that you will become a red fish. I'll explain in a second, but go ahead. Humor me and say, take an oath that I'll become a red fish. Okay. Now, what does that mean? Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do. So after everything that I have told you and shared with you and discussed with you and we have shared back and forth, and now maybe you're convinced like, all right, I have to do it. When you are done with this presentation, you're going to raise up and say, all right, my world hasn't changed, even though I'm convinced it hasn't changed, but I have to swim in a different direction. And when you start doing that, funny things start to happen. There's a very nice YouTube video where there's many people out in the park just sitting and somebody starts dancing. I don't know if you've ever seen that. He just starts dancing. He puts some music on and starts dancing, and he's dancing not in a kind of like a waltz. No, he's going freakish. He was doing things that he's just being free. And everybody was just looking at each other and like, what is this guy doing? And then somebody else comes and shares and starts dancing with that person. 30 seconds later, 2 more people show up. By the end of that, it's only a 3-minute video. By the end of that, everybody almost in the park has been dancing. Fascinating. That's what's going to happen when you start to lead the charge. Now, have you heard of Anthony Robbins? He's if you haven't, Anthony Robbins is one of the great coaches of our time, if you will, though he hates being called a coach. He's a very influential person. And I've been fortunate to attend one of his seminars. It was a 5-day seminar. And we started the day at 9 o'clock in the morning. We finished at 1 o'clock in the morning. He was doing all the talking. He gave us a break between 6 and 7 in the evening. That was it. And for 5 days, it was an intense training. So here's what he says about the should and the must. This is one of our videos. All right, and let me see if the sound is still on. Can you hear it?
The number one thing that's going to change your life, the only thing that will change your life, change your business, change your money, change your relationship, is you must raise your standard. I know that sounds boring, stupid, basic, but it's the truth. The only thing that changes our life long term is when we raise our standards. What does that mean? That sounds so boring and dumb. It means that all of us in life have things we want. We don't get what we want, we get what we have to have. We all get what we tolerate in ourselves and other people. But when you're no longer willing to tolerate something, that's when life changes. The difference in people is their standards, period. The difference in people is their standards, period. What do I mean by standards? Everyone in the world has a list of things they think they should do. I should lose weight. I should work out. I should spend more time with my kids. I should work harder. I should make more calls. I should.
Okay. Any questions so far? All right. The last part is something I don't know how many of you are familiar with, and it's coaching. How many of you know what coaching is? I'm not talking about athlete coaching. Okay. Note to everybody, this is a personal opinion, okay? I believe that the future of physicians, medicine, healthcare lies in coaching. That's a personal belief. No data out there. So, okay, I'm making that disclaimer. All right. Same. Thanks, Cody. You know, I talked about the landscape, right? Managing the now, preparing for the future. This is what it seems like what we're doing, especially after COVID hit. So we have not yet fully figured out how to deal with the prior landscape of burnout. COVID hit, and now we have this. Our current landscape keeps changing. How do we maintain our balance? How do we successfully navigate it? And how do we lead others and make sure they do not fall? Very interesting and questions that need to be answered. And then we need to look ahead without stumbling in the now. I'm looking at where I need to go, but look at my landscape now. How do we do that? What do we need and why? What will the road look like later? Will it ever be smooth and somewhat predictable again? And what will be the new norm? These are all questions we need to answer. But if last week, you know, there's an expression that says when man plans, God laughs. If last week's events didn't highlight this, I don't know what else would. So we got COVID, we got plenty of life examples to show us that we can plan all we want, but the landscape is like lava. And we love it when the landscape is not like lava, where it's concrete and we can walk and predict and not stumble. There's a book by Marshall Goldsmith that says, what got you here won't get you there. If by now it's not evident, I hope it is by now evident that the way you are living your lives and practicing your profession has led you, or most likely has led you or may lead you to burnout. And if the process of all of what I'm talking about underscoring is change, then something else has to happen so that change happens. Okay? And I hope that you also, that I've impressed upon you that we need to develop those new skills. Some of the tools that I gave, I need the knowledge to be able to change that. And once I can do that, I can change other, and I need to know what to do. And again, since the common theme is change, let's talk about change. As I said, change is movement from point A to point B. All right. The patient comes to you, you do that, you diagnose them, you do their tests, and you say, all right, here's the thing. You have a disease. We have to have you lose 50 pounds of weight, start taking your medications, and so on and so forth. Okay, we have to do all of that. We know what the problem is, we know what the outcome is, you have to do it. But there's an underlying question here that I don't think we answer enough. What do you think the question is that we need to answer or look at closer? You have to move from point A to point B. Okay, I understand. Point A is where something bad's happening. Point B is where something good's happening. What's the question that would come to your mind?
I guess the question is, how do I get the person from point A to point B, or what stops me from getting point A to point B?
Howard, thank you. You hit the nail on the head. The question now becomes how? How do I move? Okay. Take a moment. I'm going to ask you 3 questions. These are 3 existential questions. If you are able to answer these questions, you have reached nirvana as far as human existence. When you're doing rehab on someone, say you've got a certain diagnosis and you need certain tools, you know that this patient, you cannot rehab this patient without these tools. You study the patient, you find out what their diagnosis, you have some metrics, all right, they can do this much as far as movement. All right, today we have to get them to this point. I need this tool. I have the patient. That's my goal. That's my tool. I know how to do it. Well, let's go ahead and do it, right? That's usually what happens no matter what. Now, when you go through life, these are the three questions that I have for you. Theodore Roosevelt, in his communication with his troops, he says, and I use the quote all the time, he says, do what you can with what you have where you are. So my three questions for you are the following. What can you do? If I'm here talking to you about change, what can you really do in your life? What do you really have? And do you know where you are truly? If I'm going to operate on someone, I don't have the tool. I know the tools that I need. I know all of this, therefore I can operate. We go through life every single day and we make life-changing decisions. And I'm trying to tell you to make life-altering decisions, but none of us can really answer these questions. Here, dive in, go do open heart surgery and wing it. Brings back the self-awareness that Heather was talking about. Because if you can answer these three questions, our life is a quest to answer these questions, if you will. What can I do? If I don't know what I can do, then how do I know that I'm not taking on too much or too little? If I don't know what I have, then how do I know what's going to help me? And if I don't know where my starting point is, how do I know what I need to do to cover? So you see a patient said, here's your diagnosis, right? You have to get to this point. That's it. Then you leave the patient's like, does the doctor know that I don't have money? That I have 6 dependents? That I cannot afford lean meat? That I'm without a job? That my situation is this? He told me where I need to be, but he has no clue of how to get me there. You have no clue of how to get that person there. You have goals. To achieve those goals, you need your hands free. But the reality is your hands are tied. How do you untie your hands to get to your goals? Do you know? Enter the realm of coaching. If you want to be able to analyze where you're going to start from and identify an achievable goal and know the how to get there, you'll need to answer these 3 questions. And this is what coaching does. And the reality and the beauty of coaching is it does not give you answers. You come up with your own. That's the strength of coaching. So any questions so far? You can't reach a destination which you don't know. So what's the use of hard work if you don't know where it's taking you, right? Pretty simple. Coaching is a growth promoting relationship with the client patient with the following at its core: developing clear vision, understanding of abilities, strengths, and weaknesses, achievable goal setting, nourishes internal motivation. These are the words again, and enhances the capacity to change. There are a few recurring themes here. It is not counseling or therapy. According to the ICF, International Coach Federation, a coach is responsible to help the client discover, clarify, and align with what the client wants to achieve. If we have time, we'll go through a very small coaching exercise. Encourage client self-discovery. Elicit collaborative and client-generated solution and strategies. It's always about the client. They come up with the solution. Hold the client responsible and accountable. You have to do that. So the tools of the coach: listen, don't talk or not talking, ask, not telling, reflect, not commenting, no advising or counseling, being collaborative and co-creative, and do not give answers, allow for self-discovery. Now, I say that because you need to kind of contrast that as far as being a physician or a human being towards yourself. Coaches are trained to accept and meet clients where they are ready. We don't meet patients when they are ready. We just tell them what to do. Ask clients to take charge. We try to be the paternalistic point of view of taking charge of their life, but they also tell them, you know what, you got to do what you have to do. You have to take these things. Guide clients in mindful thinking, feeling, and doing the work that builds confidence. Just go do it. Which physician does that with their patient, with their family members, with themselves? Help clients define a higher purpose for health and well-being. Uncover the client's natural impulse to be well and support the clients in tapping their innate fighting spirit. That's what they're trained to do. What coaches are not. They do not order, direct, warn, caution, give advice, make suggestions, persuade, tell people, disagree, agree, approve, praise, or judge, criticize, or blame. All right. An expert approach, that's us, authority, educator, defines the agenda, feels responsible for clients' health, solves the problems, focuses on what's wrong, has the answers, interrupts if off topics. How many times have you interrupted? If the patient goes off topic? I know I have. Patient comes into the ER like, it all started 3 years ago. Like, no. What brought you in today? Works harder than the client and then wrestles with the client. Coach's approach, partner, facilitator of change, elicit client's agenda. Client is responsible for health, fosters possibilities, focuses on what's right, co-discovers the answers, learns from the client's story, client works as hard as a coach and dances with the client. Now take a moment. All your training is the expert approach, which is something you use in your personal life. In leadership, I talked about how physicians extrapolate their clinical leadership to all other aspects of their life, be it a parent or whatever, what have you. We also use that expert approach in our communication and dealing with everybody else. To make the shift from the expert to the coach approach, it's going to take a while. The beautiful thing about physicians, though, is even though we are set in our ways, once you convince us of something, we're going to do it with passion. Remember the figure or the table when I said with all the burnout, when they asked physicians, you know, what's the most concerning thing? 63% said that it's the impact on patients' healthcare. That passion of ours, will help fuel the change we need. And we know that to be true. Coaching is based on theories of self-determination, positive psychology, appreciative inquiry. And appreciative inquiry is finding out not what didn't work, but what worked and repeating it. Nonviolent communication, motivational interviewing, EI, emotional intelligence, flow theory, social cognitive theory, constructive development. So it's a growth promoting relationship. Clients are not broken and need to be fixed. We shift the focus from what is wrong with someone to what is right, help clients find out what they really want, and help clients chip away at whatever is blocking them from achieving their goals. The value is in the growing process more than the expert opinion of coaches, and help in achieving goals. Neuroplasticity, which is something that we talk about. Part two is they elicit self-motivation. So it's not external, it's internal or autonomous motivation, connecting something to a purpose now and in the future for change to happen. When the act is done for the reward of its own self, this provides the greatest motivation. And then help build confidence. See how everything is intertwined, whether it's leadership, self-care, change. So you have to build confidence and the capacity to sustain. This occurs with effort over time. A little success improves motivation and confidence. And if you remember, we also talked about resilience, the micro successes, the serenity prayer, finding out what you can control, bringing it to the circle of focus, achieving the goal, little success, improved resilience, improved self-care. Coaches help people identify the steps of success. And then it is a process of change. When we're all starting, whether it's now, no matter where you are in your life, you're probably going to need some guidance to get to a new goal. That's the how. And if you structure that process, and that's what coaches help people do, achieve smart models specific, smart goals, specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time bound, you enhance success. If you put a specific goal that's achievable and people get to it, man, they feel great. There's an accountability issue here. You hold your clients accountable and you hammer on that accountability. Some of the outcomes of coaching: increased self-awareness and self-knowledge, increased personal responsibility, acquisition of new knowledge and skills, attainment of personal and professional goals, sustainable behavioral change, increased life satisfaction, increased self-efficacy, developed sense of purpose and meaning, becoming one's best self. If this is what we have been talking about all this time. What the literature says about coaching. We know that coaching is more in healthcare is improving. There's actually some clinics out there that now have hired a health coach. So the patient walks into the physician, they get their goals, they go to see the health coach, and they help them with the how. And we know that coaching can happen whether it's remote, by phone, by Zoom or WebEx or what have you, and it works for groups also. And so if we're trying to enhance change, behavior change, the coaching modality is pretty wide with the same impact. So why is it coming to the surface now? Forget, not only is it the important part about burnout and life changes and so on and so forth, we need it. Healthcare needs it. The current healthcare system is made to manage and deal with acute and immediate problems. It is not set up for dealing with chronic diseases. Most people, you and I, lack the confidence, the stamina, the purpose, and focus to lead a healthy life. And that's why we use the threat technique. There's too much information out there. And people need to kind of have that summarized a little bit. They want help with immediate problems, but they also want help planning their life. And you'll find out that they need to take control of their life. And if they're jumping from one expert to the next, to the next, to the next, and we're confusing. You can see the same doctor twice and he'll tell you two different things. You go to the cardiologist, nephrologist, whoever, they'll start changing your medications. It's confusing. You have to take control. And how do you do that? You need to develop a new life skill. I'm here talking to you about burnout and how you need to change your life and why you need to do it and so on and so forth. And there are going to be several factors or forces pulling on you. You need to be able to take control of that. And how? When you answer those three questions, you'll be able to. So most people, including healthcare professionals, do not believe they know the needed skills or know how to master these new life skills. We don't. I didn't. I'm still learning. The expert approach is becoming obsolete and telling people what they need to do. I'm going to try to, like I said, have a small exercise with you illustrating that. The focus needs to shift to helping people achieve their health goals. Healthcare is not a one glove fits all. We say that all the time. So if it's so individualized, why do you always give the cookie cutter expert advice? You got to do this. Physicians and the medical society are not equipped nor prepared for the future of healthcare. We're not. Why? It's difficult for experts in the healthcare field to be passive and not take control and charge. Clients and patients also have a difficult time adjusting to a new role of taking charge of their lives. And this relationship is new in its approach and requires a shift in thought process and mindset. I'm almost done, by the way. The future of health and wellness coaching, what does the future hold? Research into this relationship has shown promise in the ways healthcare need to change. The focus is on encouraging accountability for behavioral goals. This is the direction where it's going. The shift is towards a client-patient centered approach, but you cannot have a client-patient centered approach if the physicians and the healthcare individuals don't know how to do so. And the shift is towards self-discovery and active learning processes, not passive, here's what you need to do. The process is at its relative infancy stage and much more is to come. And like I said, it's an ongoing process relationship. New discoveries and pathways are being sought after. as part of the research that we have been doing for the past 7 years, is in that realm. So the next few slides are going to be heavy because they're going to take 5 or 6 hours of conversation and put them in summary. So get your brains ready, okay, and your focus, so you can follow the summation of everything we have done. All right? You ready? So, change. Physicians are trained to do what? Focus on the acute problems and have the expert model. That has led to chronic failure. Compliance is low and healthcare system is failing. Chronic diseases, healthcare concerns, life and wellness goals is our part of our issues, and we need to get patients and clients there. And they're interchangeable. The coach helps identify achievable goals, answers the how, not answers, helps you answer the how, and then do what you can with what you have where you are. The coach is responsible for the intrinsic motivation, the stamina, the confidence, and the focus. They are responsible for eliciting that. And they focus on patient autonomy, developing life skills. Everything on the right side of your screen, I guess you're seeing it on the right side of your screen like me, is where we need to be. Everything on the left side is where we are. You see that shift that has to happen? Now you are 16, 17 people that I have been talking to for the past 5 or 6 hours. And we have covered a ton of concepts. And if I get the buy-in from you, just realize how much it's taking to do so. Now, if you extrapolate that on a bigger level, just with your colleagues, then on an institutional level, an organizational level, then on a government level, you can see some of the changes that are ahead. So the coach integrates multiple disciplines so we can finally truly apply that healthcare is not a one glove fits all. Does that make sense so far? Yes? Stop me anytime it doesn't. If you want something you've never had, you must be willing to do something you've never done. Simple enough. Okay. Every human being is the author of his own health or disease and own success or failure. We are, again, take control. Coaching is releasing a person's potential to maximize their own performance. It is helping them to learn rather than teaching them. We must promote health coaching's practices and its principles as both an example and a force for change within a system of healthcare that is struggling to create greater accessibility, effectiveness, and sustainability. All right, let's go to the 30,000-foot view or 10,000-foot view, however you want to look at it. Here's what we've covered so far. The past 5 hours, 6 hours, the whole presentation, it started with what concept, what idea? What's the first thing I told you? This journey is about what? What is it, Kimberly? I saw your lips move. What was all of this about?
Self-awareness.
Before that, the first thing that I highlighted, this is all about one word I said.
Wellness. Change.
Right? Change. Then I said, we're going to change. If we're going to do that, we have to use intrinsic motivation, right? So to do that, I had to tie your change to purpose. You have to be convinced that you're changing for the right reasons. And then we introduced burnout and all the obstacles that burnout will do. So now it might seem that, okay, you're that person pulling that boulder up that mountain. A few things are going to happen. You're going to be tired. You're going to say, maybe you just let that boulder. And the higher it goes, it seems the more difficult it becomes. So tying change to intrinsic motivation and purpose helps provide you the reason to continue pushing that boulder. But you can't push that boulder if you don't know that it's doable. If you look at that boulder, it's like, nope, can't do it, then your mindset is not the right place. So we talked about the importance of mindset. If you believe you can do it, you're going to push that boulder. So we talked about the skills that you need to push that boulder. Let's start with the self-awareness. Where are you, and so on and so forth. And why is it important to take care of yourself so you're able to push that boulder? And then how you're going to lead yourself and then lead others. Here's how you do it. Here's how you push that boulder. Now, we did that to give you all the tools and the means necessary. And then finally, we introduced coaching as a concept so that you are able to know the answer to the how. Does that make sense so far? That's our journey so far. Before I dive into where I told you everything will happen, your prefrontal cortex. Heather, all right, unmute yourself. Heather presented today with a problem. She was talking about the concept of, we all know about self-care and wellness and so on and so forth, but how do we do it, right? That was that concern. Something to that effect that, we all talk about it, but it's difficult. Tell me your concerns.
You just in general with residents?
About the topic you presented this morning, you talked about.
Oh, just finding, I feel like it's hard, I think, too, as for physicians to take time to self-reflect on anything outside of just learning from a case, but like to actually do like introspection of, I have a feeling, why, how do I, like label that feeling to process those things so they don't become this big thing that has this huge impact on us and we have no idea. We already feel like we don't have control for the most part in our training. And I think kind of even we don't even feel like we can control those types of feelings because we don't even know where they're coming from.
Okay, and then you talked about the difficulty of sharing that with others or the others having the same problem, correct?
Right. I think it's just a perceived, we already talked about that too, about, being a weakness and if you don't know how to label something, you don't even know how to talk about it. And so I feel like, you don't want to be like the weak resident or like everybody else is doing these things. I should just suck it up and do it too, not knowing if anyone else is struggling or not.
Okay, so if you're going to isolate one problem that you would like to tackle to change that environment, what would it be? Give me something that you would wish you had there.
I wish like more time even in meds, like starting even in like the med school level was spent on kind of like, I guess, self inspection of your thoughts and feelings and being able to help you deal with those and label those. Because I feel like if you don't have like control of that early on, it just becomes this huge issue later.
So now let's focus on a problem that you have now here. Say, what I'm hearing you say is that you wish maybe now that you have the ability to take more control of your time. Is that something, or more control of your thoughts?
I think so. More control of, I guess, dealing with the burnout issues. Yeah.
Okay. So let's go through a small exercise, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. So what I'm hearing you say is that you're having a problem, or you wish that you were able to take more control of your time and the self-awareness, self-reflection.
Mm-hmm.
What have you tried so far?
I think I'm really good about doing it once I'm home. Like before the day, I like plan my day, like you said, I try and get prepared so things like don't upset me later. And I'm good at like processing things after I get home of like, why am I angry or whatever emotion I'm feeling. But I feel like when I'm at work or just during the day, I don't do any of that part. Everything just kind of happens and I'm so focused on my tasks and doing things that I don't take the time at the moment to process and like not let it build.
Why? Why? Why does that happen to you at work?
Get everything done at work. and you don't really have time to think if you're getting, either from your attending asking you to do things, nursing asking you to do things, putting in orders, an admissions coming, constantly paged and having to deal with things, or a code is called, you got to go run upstairs. You don't really have like time to just sit and process things sometimes.
So again, what I'm hearing you say is that if you were afforded the time, you probably would do this more at work, correct?
I think so.
What have you tried to afford yourself time at work?
Nothing really, I guess. Like sometimes I'll try and work like during lunch. I try and like get my notes done during that time because I know there's probably like a time I have where nurses are a little less likely to bombard with pages. So I can try and get most of my notes done that hour. So then I can like focus on things in the afternoon. But not a lot.
So if you were to think about a couple of ways, or maybe just one way that you might want to change things so that you are afforded time, how would that look like for you? What would you do, and how much time would you need? For the sake of brevity, let's just make it 10 minutes or 5 minutes. So if you were going to try to think of something that allows you 5 minutes of uninterrupted time, what are some of the things that you might do differently at work?
Turn my phone on mute. Just kidding. 5 minutes. I mean, I would say there are sometimes in certain rotations, like some attendings, I think are a little more cognizant, and they'll say like, hey, let me do some of these notes. Let me take care of some of these things so you can, go watch your patients in therapy. And so sometimes it's hard when you have some attendings who expect you to pretty much carry the whole load of the service to take even just 5 minutes for yourself. Especially with our, pages between the pager and then we have the perfect serve stuff on our phone. So there's never like just a second where you just have like your time. So I feel like the only way to have those 5 minutes would be to literally turn my phone off for 5 minutes and like go in a room by myself and just have quiet.
And again, for the sake of the brevity, so what I'm hearing you say that your life in the hospital requires immediate responses to things.
That's
correct?
what the nurses feel this way, yes.
Okay, wonderful. So what I'm hearing you say is that the expectations of the nurses are that you answer immediately, and the pressure on you is to answer immediately.
Yes.
Okay. What can you try in that realm? Do all pagers have to be answered immediately?
No, they don't. Most 90% do not.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yet you feel you need to answer them immediately.
Because if you don't, it'll call your phone within a certain amount of time. And then if you still miss that, it calls your attending, and then they freak out wanting to know what's going on and why you're not responding to pages.
So from everything that you have listened to as far as boundaries and things, is there something that you can do different that can help start buying you 5 minutes a day?
I mean, we've tried to start having just between the residents and nursing, like separate meetings instead of just with nursing leadership, and trying to explain, like, I get it, you have requirements to report certain things, but to understand the difference between what is like an urgent request versus what can either wait or does not need an urgent response. So we've been doing those types of educations too, to try and decrease. But I think with the new perfect serve phone, it's so easy for them just to send it versus a page where, they knew it would take time. And so we've been having a lot of those talks of trying to decrease the amount that we get paged. We've also been trying to improve our, admissions where we have PRNs for most, anything available, so they don't have to page you constantly for any as needed med.
Very good. So let's just focus on that page. Is there something that you can do when nurses, until you change the desire and the urge of nurses to page you because the person needs Tylenol right now? Is there something that you can do within maybe the paging system or operation that can buy you some time?
I mean, I guess you could forward it to your attending, but I don't know what else.
Okay, normally this exercise will take for the next 30 minutes or 35 minutes. But what you are seeing me do is help Heather identify the problem, then narrowing it down, focusing it down. And then usually there's a silence where I will ask her a question to reflect. And then you'll start seeing her brain. She has to reach a certain level of depth before her brain actually can come up with solutions. Now, how many of you felt the urge to suggest something?
I feel her pain. I've been through that.
How many of you just felt like, I want to give you a solution?
I'm assuming everybody who wanted, everybody who heard it.
And that's our default mode, right? And what you have noticed is I didn't suggest anything. I didn't say anything. Why didn't you try this? I'm asking, what have you tried? What can you try? What can you try differently? And if we continue with that exercise, I guarantee you, even as I started to ask more questions, most of you started to come up with different solutions. What if you tried this? What if you tried that? What if we did this? What if we did that? So that little coaching dance is me probing you, if you will, or you probing yourself. I'm just bouncing back some things so that you're actually able to come up with solutions. And if you continue thinking about it in that certain way, I guarantee you're going to come up with something that works. But that was just that's the whole concept of coaching. Now, I hope that was helpful. Again, this was very crude, maybe like 1% of what coaching can do, and it's a very abbreviated, focused. So almost done. Change, we went through that. Prefrontal cortex. Now, everything I talked to you about now hopefully will make sense. Prefrontal cortex. It is the place that houses our cognitive abilities, our IQ, our self-control, our emotional intelligence. And this is where we interact with the physician, interaction with the patient, and generate the satisfaction and connect to purpose and need. This is also the place of mindset. This is where we choose how to respond to stress. So if I was to ask you, which part of your brain, given everything we've been through, you would really like to work on, I guess the answer now makes sense. Well, I got to work on my prefrontal cortex. It is also the place that controls the amygdala. And remember, we talked about the amygdala hijack, road rage, yelling at your laptop. So with the hijack, there's loss of IQ, loss of willpower, and lower EQ. And so the prefrontal cortex will control the amygdala. Now, the anterior cingulate cortex is a little area posterior and caudal to the prefrontal cortex a little bit. And it is responsible for problem solving and creativity, which is something physicians rely on all the time. And again, that's where the prefrontal cortex controls the amygdala. We learned that with burnout, all the factors, training, practice of medicine, everything that's happening in our healthcare world, our prefrontal cortex shrinks. We lose connections. It becomes smaller and smaller and smaller because of everything that we have gone through. We also know that with negative emotions and mood, hello, burnout, and everything we talked about, the ACC shrinks. And depending on the severity, well, you may end up with a prefrontal cortex that has lost millions of its connections, not billions. So if we're convinced that we have to work on our prefrontal cortex, this is where mindfulness, self-care, wellness, EI training, and coaching hits. Right there. If I told you that you need to work on your emotional abilities and do the self-care and the leadership, it's that place. And we know by neuroscience and neuroimaging that the more self-care and well you are, the more mindful you are. And with coaching, you will grow your prefrontal cortex. With that growth, your cognitive abilities, your self-control, everything grows with it. We also know that if we are able to tie it to purpose and need of medicine, that prefrontal cortex lights up. This is the intrinsic motivation. You're doing all of this for that. Now, we also know that if we enhance positive emotions and mood, the ACC gets bigger. We know that. The challenges we didn't talk about, we talked about some of them, is how do we change or tackle the outside factors, the antecedent factors that help with the burnout. And whereas there's a ton of research, obviously, on those things, and remember, I showed you that you can go from top down, from an institute, governmental, political level, all the way down to the person, or you can go from the person all the way up. And the reason I start with the person is because who's going to lead the change to help the people if you don't know what you are talking about? And so that's why, at least a huge part of my research has been on the individual. The key to change, micro initiatives. We talk about achievable goals, right? Micro initiatives, micro steps give you macro success. And so momentum is something that you have to carry with. When you start pushing that boulder, swimming, becoming a redfish, swimming against the tide, you're going to have to develop momentum. And there's a formula by Michael McQueen. He says momentum is focus plus action times consistency. That is all about change. You have focus, intrinsic motivation. You have action, you know how to do and what to do, and consistent. You have to do it all the time, the same way. I know there's some background noise, so I apologize. What's next? We talked about first, know yourself. So identify your burnout, your abilities, your assets, your limitations. Answer those 3 questions. Decide not only that you should change, but that you must and will change. Enhance yourself, your EQ, self-care, and resilience. I gave you some exercises. There's a ton of them out there. But if you start with those are enough for now. Plan, with or without a coach. Outline a plan of action based on your parameters, right? And assess and adjust. Adapt what is useful, reject what is useless, and add what is specifically your own. Just because you start down on a path you want to change and then you find out, oh, maybe this is not working for me. Adapt, change it. Some people, things work differently than others. On an institutional level, identify a champion, a leader for the cause. We now know how important that is. Involve everybody. If you're going to take charge of wellness in your institute, your life, your clinic, your family, everything, involve everybody. Identify the needs, outline your goals. So the same way on an individual levels, you do it on an institutional level. Develop an action plan, identify resources, assess and reevaluate, fine tune and commit. Same steps, but on an organizational level. And we know now why you involve management. Last couple of slides. Some reflections. In a battle, all you need to make you fight is a little hot blood and the knowledge that it's more dangerous to lose than to win. If you don't believe that it is extremely important for us to combat burnout, given the effects on people, on you, suicide and everything else, given the need of healthcare, given the need of patients, the needs for you. If I haven't convinced you that this is a battle that has to be won, must be won, then I haven't done, I haven't achieved my goal, if you will. So I hope that I have convinced you that it is far more dangerous to let go than to push forward. No matter how great the talent or effort, some things just take time. You can't produce a baby in 1 month by getting 9 women pregnant. So some things will require time. It takes about 14 to 180 days to anchor a habit. Medicine is only for those who cannot imagine doing anything else. That talks back to our primal sympathy. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, this is to have succeeded. How great is that? If you don't take a moment to do this and realize the nobility of where you are, the greatness of where you are. I'm not trying to inflate anybody's pride. It isn't. It's from the humble side of it. You're saving lives. Despite everything you do, if you're driving down the road and you see a child walking across the highway, you stop, you pick up the child, and you save them from a car running over. People come to you and say, "Oh wow, you saved this child's life," and you feel great. I just saved this child's life. We somehow lose it when we go to work. And again, to echo Louis, what he said, and many physicians feel that way, I'm just looking at the time to be done with it. Your purpose is very important. You have a very, very noble purpose. And I want you to celebrate that. Not many people know it. And don't expect people to understand it. Celebrate it with others. He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. Pretty self-evident. And then treat people as if they were what they ought to be, and you help them become what they are capable of becoming. If you feel that you are reduced to a clerk, or I just press buttons here, nobody cares about what I think, then people are getting the least of you. But if you are able to get the most of you and help people become the most of themselves, you're going to get the best, most engaged part of who they are, because you help them tie it back to purpose and need. So, how many of you wondered about this person? Okay, so Ayana, what is he doing?
Digging a hole.
All right. I'm going to switch so I can see your screen here. What does it take to dig that hole?
Some tools. I mean,
Tools. He has a shovel.
energy. Yeah.
He has,
Like determination to, or I guess like why are you doing this?
purpose.
Yeah. I guess like an end goal.
I want to dig 10 feet a hole, a 10-foot hole in my backyard, right? What else comes to mind? I mean, you said purpose, tool, energy to do that.
Yeah, energy. Yeah. And some help to get out.
Some help to get out.
Yeah,
What
when
else?
you're done with the 10 feet.
What else? Yeah. What else do you think he needs? What is he? How did he get there?
Just started. I don't know. He just
Yeah.
started.
Just started, and you would think that, okay, he identified, first of all, he has a goal. I need to dig 15 feet because I need to hit water, for example. This is where I'm going to dig. I've done my research. This is what I'm going to dig. Now I'm going to start digging. What's one thing he does to dig this much?
I don't know. It just starts. I don't really know what more you can do. You just do it.
Same thing, right? It's the same repetitive motion. It wasn't right. He didn't, it's the same shovel. He keeps shoveling. So what this person highlights is that he has a goal. He identified the goal. If he's paralyzed, he's not going to dig, right? So he says, I think I can dig 15 feet. I may have done it before, what have you, okay? But I know my physical strength. I'm going to dig 15 feet. It may take me 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, but I know I can get there with the proper rest and what have you. I know how to do it. I've got the tool for it. And I just have to stay focused, take action, and be consistent. This is how I developed the momentum to do all of this. That's the change That's not an event, but it requires repetition. That's what this person was telling us throughout our time together. Whatever you get convinced with and want to do, remember what it would take. Okay? Excellence is never an accident. It is the result of high intention, sincere effort, intelligent direction, skillful execution, and the vision to see the obstacles as opportunities. I mean, this was Aristotle 2,000, 3,000 years ago. 3,000 years later, with all the modern science and everything that we have studied, we agree. With that, I'm going to stop. Here's my contact information. If you guys have any questions outside of this presentation, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to open the floor for reflections or questions before we adjourn. By the way, you're going to have to evaluate this whole presentation. This is how I learn. So I'll get your feedbacks, I'll get your notes, and I'll change whatever works, whatever you liked, enhance it, whatever you didn't like, I'll get rid of it. But just, I need your feedback. So when you have the time to evaluate the presentation or the course, just let me know. And so any thoughts right now or reflections, like I said?
I really like the coaching mindset as far as healthcare, you know, relating it to what I do in orthopedics. Is a lot of times it's such a, what can I give you or what do you want from me? It's like a barter, like an exchange, you know, and they come in and like they're buying a product or a service, and that's not really the goal there. And, you know, I'm sure that in other specialties alike, it's such an issue with compliance with restrictions or treatment or suggestions or everything. And, you know, it just doesn't work when you tell them, this is what you have to do because I said so. So, you know, I like the thought of starting it. You know, what are your goals coming to see me? And, you know, we get a lot of like, oh, you know, I want to be able to dance with my daughter at her wedding. And it's like, great. Like, what can we do together? Like, what kind of steps can we implement on my side and on your side so that you reach that goal? You know, why don't you bring your daughter into the next visit and we can talk about some of these things and really try to like attach that sense of meaning and purpose to the patient so that, you know, it's not just, well, I thought I told you to do your exercises, or, you know, I thought I told you that you can't do that or eat that. And I don't know. I like that approach. I think that would work a lot in ortho, at least.
Like, tell you the exception, not the rule. So thank you. Yeah, that's wonderful. Talha, you're welcome. Thank you for being here. What else resonated with you in the presentation? I know for me, it's very heavy, well, you know, as far as content. But what else resonated with you? What you liked, what you didn't like? Some reflections, some thoughts you want to share?
I found I really liked the emotional intelligence, kind of the emphasis on being resilient. It made me kind of reflect on whether or not I think that I'm resilient and what kind of things that I could be doing, you know, in small things, like you said, just kind of getting that momentum going so that come residency, I'm not as quick to feel like giving up. So that really resonated with me. And so just kind of, so I've been like the last couple of days since we talked about it last time, thinking through the ways that I could, in small things, like not give up. So if a conversation is going a lot longer than I'd like it to go, you know, how can I not give up in this conversation? Or, you know, whatever, you know, just different like small things now. I mean, because as a fourth year, like right now, I'm not in the hospital. I'm not doing a whole lot. So there's not a whole lot that's work-related stress, but I'm trying to kind of be intentional about changing the way that I respond to other things so that when work-related stress comes in the summer, I might be maybe a little more resilient.
It becomes a challenge.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Can you say it one more time?
It becomes more of a challenge and less of a stress.
I think I mean, all of the course was really good, honestly. In the time that we had available, it was really eye-opening, and I kind of wish that I had experienced all of this at the beginning of my training. I think this type of course is that valuable. But the coaching part, especially when you basically stated, or your belief that this is where that the way that we interact with patients should be like coaching. I think that would be the most beneficial thing for the patients. It's just, as you said, our training has not has not promoted that type of relationship, and it should be something that's incorporated. And at the same time, I think patients should embrace that mindset, because a lot of patients come in with the feeling that my doctor is going to fix me. He's going to tell me, or she's going to tell me what's wrong, and I can choose or choose not to take their advice. You know what I mean? But they don't see it as I'm coaching you, and we don't see it that way either. So the mindset would have to be changed on both ends. And many times, as Ayana was stating, time is an issue. Like, you start a conversation with a patient and you just don't have that much time. Even yesterday, we were doing the billing, and everything is time-based. Patients have 15 minutes or 30 minutes. You don't have that you can't really have a long counseling session. You can barely get through the criteria for the visit that you need for billing, much less trying to coach them, especially if it's the first time you're seeing them. So I feel like I understand that the change would have to happen between the patient and the practitioner, but at the same time, there needs to be a larger environment of change from us going all the way up to accommodate this type of framework. I think that's the most beneficial change for the patients and the practitioners, because we're not as stressed. We're not forcing something down their throat, sometimes literally, just to get a result. And they appreciate it, and they are part of their own empowerment and development.
That can help you with that from your end of the patient.
Your audio cut out. I can't really hear you.
So what is one step that you can do now that can help you with your problem and the patient as far as the mindset? What's one thing you can do at the beginning of your, but narrowing it down, encounter that you can do that can help you with that? One thing.
I guess I can always start the encounter by reminding the patient that it is their health, and that I'm here to help them to find their own solutions.
Very good. And Cody alluded to it, and his was setting expectations. What are your expectations, right? And it's how can I help you get them? Because remember, one of the definitions of stress is unmet expectations. So the way you're saying it, let's define the relationship here. In this way, if the patient says, hey, I've got a problem, you're the expert, you got to fix it. Different than a patient says, look, my expectation is you give me the solutions and I'll decide. Then you're speaking the same language or know which dance floor you're on. And it's just one simple question that sets the tone for the encounter. Because we assume, oh, the patient needs this. Well, just ask them a simple question and you'll be surprised. But thank you, Howard. Yes, I understand. Look, I understand the challenge. I said the challenges are there, but it's up to us. It's not they that are going to change it. And we're not going to wait for the powers that be to change it because they don't understand it. A real life example, in 2016, I had a conversation with the ACGME about introducing emotional intelligence into the curriculum. I talked to their VP. I got to the second to the first person, whatever. And we had conversations back and forth, and I sent him the thought processes and everything.
And here's his response. This was March, I think. He says, you know what, in September, we're going to have a meeting and we're going to talk about, this thought process. And then we're going to assign people to do their research. And then we're going to meet in April of 2017, or this was 2015, April of 2016, so that we can meet for those. And in 2016, once we come up, we're going to assign committees to define their roles. Then we'll meet again in September of 2016. And once we meet in September of 2016, we're going to talk about the guidelines. Then we're going to talk about how we're going to implement those guidelines in March of 2017. You get my drift? And so I asked him, I said, what about everybody who is kind of like dying now? He says, I understand. Yeah. He was just navigating whatever was in front of him. And so this is part of the passion that I have. If he was like, I'm not waiting for somebody to come up with something. I want to come up with something. And then I want to hopefully be able to convince them to do so. And you're going to be one of those soldiers to get to it. And if you come up with something that works, don't stop announcing it. Just think about how many people, and if one person, Howard, is impacted by your thought process, just one physician, you think about that ripple effect. Anybody else would like to share something?
I thought this was all very helpful, and I really appreciated you keeping us engaged. And I particularly found like the movie clips to be helpful, but I guess what resonated with me most was the like being self-aware and knowing yourself in order to best serve those around you. So thank you.
Thank you. This was a very important topic. I think someone mentioned earlier that they wish that they had this earlier on in their training. I do as well. I think I actually looked over your slides before your presentation, and we had one of our residents present this as their senior 10 rounds, and just going over it with the self-awareness, I think I was able to relate to a lot of those topics and traits. And I definitely was not aware at that time. I think burnout is something that's really real in residency. And there was a lot of things that I was also doing that I didn't even realize was because I was burned out, So I definitely think I've had some really low points. And it wasn't something that people really addressed or try to assist with. And I think that just having this talk is really, really important. Thank you.
Okay, well, we're 25 minutes early. For everybody's extra time. Yes, Anne.
Yes. What I really liked about the course is that it really links burnout to leadership, to self-awareness, self-control, to I've been burnt out, and I've been through seen burnout come as a concept through our practice and to how we're taking care of our residents and our fellows. And it's I think it's much better to have it linked across the rest of the spectrums. And it really makes it more actionable, and it's not like an isolated thing, because it feels like when we were in residence, sleep and the problems with sleep became such a gained focus, and they told us, oh, you need to make sure you're sleeping enough. I'm like, that's great, when's that gonna happen? It's isolated, right? One thing I realized there is a background information and background studies research to a lot of the stuff that you're saying, and some of the stuff is also concept based and where we're going, which obviously by definition doesn't have data. But if in future classes, if you could include at least some of the references, like the Daniel Kahneman's work to like thinking fast, thinking slow, slowing down your thought process. I'm unaware of the exact the physician executives and the stuff that you mentioned about how it impacts mortality, etc. I think to be honest about it, a lot of us that come to the business side and the leadership side from a physician background come with sometimes a little bit of hostility, because we like, this is too soft. I want data. And I think some of it is because we feel like we're talking to people that are not understanding where we're coming from.
Thank you, Yazan. And to answer, so if you go back to, and you'll have access to this, the slide 18 on leadership, 3 actually resources I put in there: Wendy Riet in 2019, Rottenstein in 2018, and Satyani in 2016. And if you look at the slides and you see something that's of interest, you were not here on Wednesday when I presented. I said all of this is data driven, none of it is my opinion. I'll be more than happy to, I've got the references for everything that I said, so I'll be more than happy to send it, because I know it helps you, especially with fellow physicians, to make that argument. Like, okay, great, wonderful. If there's no data, then I'm not going to do it. And that's been some of the issues when we first started, is to how to prove to people. But fortunately now there's more data than we can handle. And like I said, I'll be more than happy to send it to you. Anything that you think is of importance, let me know and I'll send you the reference.
Great, that's really good. And I really like the comment that you made, that like when physicians buy into something, they are like super passionate about it, because it's real. It's once they adopt something, it takes off.
To get them to adopt, that's the challenge. But once they do, you're right. Boom, they're your advocates. Okay. Well, thanks everyone again. I appreciate you all. Thanks for giving me your time and your feedback. And I'm available if you have any questions, private question, whatever you have. Call me, email me. I'm available 24/7-ish. I'm setting boundaries. Okay. Take care, everyone, and have a great weekend, and good luck moving forward with everything. And I appreciate you all. Thanks.